evening and welcome to Monday Night Politics. The Dallas Examiner has hosted Monday Night Politics for over 10 years. The Dallas Examiner does not endorse candidates. We invite all candidates to participate in Monday Night Politics because we want our community to be informed when they go to the polls to vote. Tonight we have as our moderator Demetria McCain. Demetria is a Dallasite and an activist in the community. She has hosted Monday Night Politics for many years. Demetria.
Well, good evening, everyone. Glad to have you back. We are at the tail end of this season of Monday Night Politics. We'll be here again next week. That will be our final week. But today, we are ready to roll. We are looking at 3 races today. We have, first up, we'll be looking at County Commissioner Court District number 3, and then we'll go to District number 1, and then we'll look at the Dallas County Sheriff's position, all right? So that will be the order. Just to remind folks, and for folks who are new to us, welcome, we're glad to have you. We'll follow our usual format, which is 2 minutes opening per candidate and 2 minutes closing per candidate. Questions may be asked by way of the Q&A box, so just type your questions into the Q&A box, and we'll get to as many as we can. Can't promise we'll get to all of them if we're out of time, but we'll get to as many as we can, and each candidate may reply to every question asked. All right? So with that being said, first what I want to do is give you an idea of who some of the sponsors are. You may have seen it on the slides, but I just want to give a shout out to the folks who helped make this possible, help publicize this to the community, and that would include the NAACP Dallas chapter, the Dallas Alumni chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, the Metropolitan Dallas chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, the Alpha Sigma Lambda chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, the Dallas Alumni chapter of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, the Dallas Association of Realists, the Dallas Panhellenic Council, the Theta Alpha chapter of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, the Iota Phi Theta Fraternity Incorporated, the Omicron Mu Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, the Dallas Black Chamber of Commerce, the Greater Dallas League of Young Professionals, the North Texas Cluster of the Links, South Dallas Business and Professional Women's Club Incorporated, KHVN, the Commish Radio Show, St. Luke Political and Social Action Ministry, and of course, we could never forget the venue that always hosts us when we are in person before COVID, the African American Museum in sunny South Dallas. And so without further ado, I will ask the candidates for District number 3 are John Wiley Price and S.T. Russell. So I believe that we have with us today at least one of those candidates. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself if you are here. Let's see here. Looking at my participant list, I saw them earlier. I saw them, and if any of my co-hosts want to help unmute them if they are in fact muted, that would be very helpful.
Well, mine keeps
there
showing.
We are.
Well, no, I'm here, but it says that the host has stopped the video. So
let's see if we can undo that. Let's see if we can undo that. All right. Let's see. I have several names with this. Several logins with the same name. It kind of cuts off the end. There we are. Okay. All right. Technical difficulty solved. Okay. All right. So we will begin with your opening, and then we will turn to our Q&A box for any questions that folks might have. Again, the candidates for this position are Commissioner John Wiley Price and S.T. Russell. I will get out of the way, and the floor is now yours, Commissioner.
Okay. Thank you very much. And to the Dallas Examiner and all the sponsors. All I want to say is, don't want to take a lot of your time. There are 3,141 counties in the United States. And we are one of the 73 counties in the United States. It has a double AAA bond rating, and that's by S&P and Moody's. And one of the things that we want to say is that we're very well managed. We have a good court. We recognize all of the financial challenges that any county has. But when you look at Dallas County, in the 8th or the 9th largest county out of the 3,141, the second largest in this state, I think it's very well managed. We're 955 square miles. 60% is in District 3. I probably have more of the cities, but we are equal in population on the 2.6 million people by the last census. And so when you look at that, Dallas County has moved, District 3 has moved, and we in 1999 went to a pay-as-you-go system. We went to a major capital improvement cost system. And as such, we have taken basically $600 million and leveraged $1.6 billion in transportation infrastructure. So when you look at District 3, you're going to be able to see water projects. You're going to be able to see water storage units where there were none. Cities that could not afford to, in fact, build above ground 500-gallon storage unit, 2 million gallons below ground. And at the same time, we in District 3, we host almost all of what is called Loop 9. That is the other end of George Bush. And we're moving forward. So I'm on and on, but that's basically where we are in District 3.
Thank you very much. So we have a few questions here. First question. As commissioner, what is your response to the call for police budgets to be reduced and that the money be used for other community needs?
Well, we're basically just talking about reallocating funds, and I think Dallas County demonstrated that in our last budget. First of all, counties are political subdivisions of the state. We do nothing without the authorization of the state. And as such, it says that we shall maintain detention facilities. We don't have an option. The Sheriff's Department, which is our largest department, and our sheriff, I'm sure, will speak to that. We took $5 million out of our budget this year. We spent $1 million in what we call a deflection center to reroute individuals who have historically been incarcerated in custody for what we consider to be offenses of either being mentally challenged and or just basically homeless. And so we took $1 million and put into a deflection center. The other $4 million, we are enticing our smaller cities to be able to come up and be innovative.
Thank you. Next question. What is the plan for providing water for Sand Branch?
There is none. And now tomorrow in court, the Texas Water Development Board in Proposition 8 took the voters of Texas, pays $800 million in floodplain management. Dallas County has now been the recipient of over $7 million. Sand Branch is a community within the unincorporated area. I have 99% of all unincorporated area. As such, I have 7,900 individuals. Sand Branch, by the last census count, has about 80 individuals. And I will not spend any more energy in terms of a one community doing. Now, they did receive money to do a study, but the nearest tap is over a half a mile away, and it will cost you in excess for me to have to bring to 80 people in the floodplain area. It's not going to happen. So we're going to take over $7 million. And we are going to take and deal with the whole floodplain management under the FEMA direction and the Texas Water Development Board.
Thank you. And we have a question here. What made you pick South Oak Cliff for the Deflection Center?
We chose South Oak Cliff for the Deflection Center because it was already in play. Homeward Bound was already there. It's already zoned. I mean, really and truly, it's interesting that people keep talking about this deflection center when you're talking about 15 individuals. We're talking about 15 individuals for individuals who have historically had mental challenges, homeless challenges. And so all you're talking about is diverting them. We've had a diversion program under Senate Bill 292 and House Bill 13. Again, the provisos are there. I mean, it's no different than, like I said, Houston, who has it downtown. They have a deflection center. And so we think that it is an alternative to those individuals being incarcerated, and Homeward Bound was already on the ground. It already deals with mentally challenged individuals, people who have a detox issue. And so it was natural.
All right. Our next question here we have is, what are your views on the issues inside of the county jail? Namely issues with COVID, officer morale, officer retention, and the lack of department involvement in our neighborhoods to bridge the gap and better the outlook of police in the community with the citizens of Dallas County.
Dallas County, I mean, has a number of law enforcement agencies. The Sheriff's Department, again, and I'm sure she can speak to this, but you keep in mind, the Texas Commission on Jail Standards regulates all 254 counties. Even though they don't regulate the state, they regulate us. And therefore, we're charged with maintaining a facility at a certain level, whether that is providing medical care, where nutritional food, exercise, mental health services. And so while it's custody, we're still challenged by the Texas Commission on Jail Standards and inspected. And if you look under this sheriff, we have continued to excel in terms of our programs and how we manage that facility. We have no COVID issues. We have 8 individuals right now that on staff that that have under quarantine. But when the lawsuit recently, the federal judge came through, issued a 38-page opinion, and basically said Dallas County, was performing well. I invite you to go out of the Texas Commission on Jail Standards, look at Dallas County versus smaller county. We're the second largest county in this state, and we are performing better than smaller counties. And when you look at that, we're a population of about 5,000 individuals, midnight count, and the sheriff is doing a fantastic job.
Okay, we have a question here. When it comes to contracts, what is the percentage of Blacks, Hispanics, whites, and Asians who have received, I assume it says who have received contracts, and for whom you have advocated concerning contracts? So the question is about somewhat of a percentage.
Yeah, there's a plethora. If you look at the new South Dallas Government Center on the 8301 South Polk, the $42 million facility, 100,000 square feet, including a new sheriff's academy, constable's office, new JP offices and all. Those ventures are 50-50. They have a 50-50 MWBE joint venture, general contractor. And so when you look at those projects, every project we have that kind of a participation in the project. So, we've got all kind of projects in Dallas County. Are we doing as much as we should be? Probably not. But I advocate every day. So what that does is the same individuals who are dealing with that South Dallas Government Center have now matriculated over into Redbird, where Parkland and UT Southwestern is. And as such, the joint ventures continue. And so, I'm basically, I've been here a few decades, but it's taken all this time for me and my colleagues to begin to deal with these programs. And when you look at it, Dallas County leads in what we call the RBCA Second Chance Program. That's the Regional Black Contractors, where individuals who have been formerly incarcerated in custody are now working on jobs, whether it's in the records building across the street, or whether it's on the South Dallas Government Center, which is going to be the largest center, or any of our projects. So, we advocate, and that is my premier position with Dallas County.
Right. Next question is, what is the COVID plan? Assuming obviously from the county level.
When you say the COVID plan, well, the Health and Human Services directs the guidance of what is known as the plan for moving forward in terms of managing the overall populace. Now, as we talk about these courts reopening, that comes out of the administrative judge, through the administrative judge, through the Office of Court Administration, as we talk about how we're going to move forward. So, that those plans are forged at the Health and Human Service and primarily Homeland Security. Again, state law gives the judge primary authority over Homeland Security, and he gets a chance to carry out the edicts of the governor. And should there be an issue beyond what is considered to be a 7-day emergency, then the court basically weighs in.
And we are in the midst of, obviously, Census 2020. There's a question here about the impact of the Census 2020 results on the county, on Dallas County itself.
Well, I think you saw Dallas County take leadership along with the city of Dallas in terms of appropriating dollars to make sure that we had a fair census count. It's my understanding that given the 2010 numbers, we're probably, a percentage point or so behind. It impacts us all. But we've got in the county some of the hardest to count areas. And but I do want to say that the vendor that we chose, which happened to be African American, has done nothing short of a yeoman's job under some very difficult circumstances. As you know, basically tonight at midnight, I mean, the census basically goes away. I mean, the federal government compressed it. And I think we've hit the ground. I've been out there with the census group. I've been knocking doors, walking Kleberg area, knocking doors, and basically that basically ends tonight.
So there are several other questions regarding the deflection center. I'm going to try to compile them all. Essentially, I know you've already touched upon it, but one question was, where were the other location options for the deflection center?
Oh, I don't know if there were ever any other locations. Homeward Bound for decades had been located in the Bishop Arts District. Because of land values, they were basically driven out. And the University Hills, the nursing home, was available, already zoned. That's like saying, I mean, the Dr. Lewis Deer living room that's on Al Lipscomb in South Dallas. I mean, prior to that, most of our mentally challenged individuals were either at Parkland, what we call APAL. Police departments were taking them to Parkland, or they were taking them all the way out north to Medical City, to a place called Green Oaks, which is a buttressing Medical City in that neighborhood. And so deflection, again, and I don't want to get it confused with all we're saying that those are individuals who basically either need, detoxing, homeless. And again, you're talking about 15 individuals a year. The first appropriation is on 15 individuals. We're already there. Parkland was putting a homes unit there at Homeward Bound. We are now building a clinic in that facility along with the Parkland Foundation. As you said, Dallas County put $1 million into that center. We're renovating it. It's 108 jobs in that center, and over 80% of them live south of I-30. And so, I'm having a real difficult time because they hear we're a deflection center, and you're talking about 15 to 20 people, right as we begin this process. We've got to build out those beds. We've got to continue to rehab that center. But we've done that. Even that so-called car wash that was across the street, it no longer exists as a result now that Homeward Bound is in the area.
All right, we have time for just 2 more questions here. Let's see here. Regarding COVID, how many of your DSO staff have been tested for COVID versus how many have tested positive?
Well, I'm going to probably defer that to the sheriff. We get that because we have to turn it into the Texas Commission on Jail Standards every morning. But quite a few. Anyone who has those temperature challenges, the sheriff doesn't allow anyone in the jail without a mask. If you come into that area, your temperature is checked, and if you display any kind of symptoms, then you are just like people who are coming into custody. It's the same. Parkland Hospital, as you know, runs the Dallas County Jail. In terms of medical facility. And so there is a protocol in place for both employees and individuals in custody. But again, I'm going to say the federal judge who had the same concerns when a lawsuit was filed against Dallas County did a tour with the sheriff, with the DA, with me, and with the plaintiffs. And in her 38-page opinion, she said, Dallas County is doing well, managing well, has good protocols in place, and as such, did not hold Dallas County liable to in terms of releasing individuals.
Okay, we have one more question here. One final question relates to something we kind of discussed earlier regarding contracts to people and businesses of color. And the question is, I guess, asking for a percentage breakdown, perhaps, African American, Latinx, Asian, etc. Do you have a percentage breakdown?
Well, no, we have a department, and again, the closest we'll have is Dallas County just received $239 million worth of CARES money. And of course, that's the COVID money. We took an appropriation with regards to housing. We did appropriation with regards to businesses. And what I tell people is that we made sure, I can tell you the breakdown in terms of African American, Hispanic businesses, but keep in mind, we could not fund anybody in the city of Dallas because the city of Dallas had their own money. And so the only thing we could do is to go into the DeSoto's, Duncanville, the Lancaster, the Cedar Hills, any city that was not in the city of Dallas. And I can tell you what those numbers are on the CARES money. But we have a department that is relegated to doing just that. Now, granted, we have been without a director, and we're in the process of interviewing directors right now to talk about taking over that department. But I challenge anyone that that is my number one focus with regards to Dallas County, and whether it's about second chance, primary business, whatever it takes to make sure that we're part of the system.
Okay, thank you. That's all the time we have for questions. So we now will have time for your 2-minute closing. So take the floor.
Well, I think as I said, I'm extremely proud of Dallas County. I spent a few years around here, and I think the retirement sister told me last week, that I had spent 50 years, 35 as a commissioner, 10 years with Judge Steele, and then about 5 years in the Public Works Department. And so I've spent all my life with Dallas County. I'm extremely proud of Dallas County and what Dallas County has provided in terms of leadership in this state. You pay the lowest taxes of any urban county in Texas. 254. We're number 4. You have the lowest tax exempt. When you look at Dallas County, we're a county that can be modeled, and that's what the county magazines say. Dallas County. There's no county like it.
Well, thank you very much, Commissioner. Thank you for being with us here today. And we do invite you to put your website into the chat. Just put a link there in the chat so the public can go to your website and find out any other information about you that they'd like. So much appreciated, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
All righty. All right, folks, keeping in along the same theme, we're going to move on to District Number 1, County Commissioner District Number 1 position, in which case we'll now ask, and I'll have to have you guys unmuted. We have 2 folks in that race. We have Commissioner Teresa Daniel, and we have Patrick Hardin. So we will start with openings, and we will start in alphabetical order. So Commissioner Daniel will go first. And let me just get some folks unmuted here. And let's see, where's my, just a moment, Commissioner. I want to make sure I start video on both of you folks.
Oh, that's wrong.
All right, do we have Mr. Hart? All right, there you are. All right, so again, we're now moving over to number 1. District Number 1. We'll start with opening statements, and as they're speaking, folks, you can kind of gear up your questions and put those questions in the chat, and we will get to as many as possible. So I'm going to mute my video and my audio, and I ask Mr. Harton to do the same while we have Commissioner Daniel do her opening. Go right ahead, Commissioner.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful, because I've got no video going either way, but that's just fine. My name is Teresa Daniel. I'm the Dallas County Commissioner for District 1. District 1 is the eastern part of the district that goes for a little piece of Richardson, about 2/3 of Garland, half of Mesquite, all of Pleasant Grove, Casa View, Casa Linda, East Dallas, Old East Dallas, and Oak Lawn. So it's a quarter of the county, and such an incredible mosaic of people. So part of the challenge that I face every day is what I've been doing for over 40 years, and that's bringing people together and seeing how we all together can make something better for all of us. County government is public health, public safety, roads, collect taxes, do elections, and a variety of other things. And I am your sitting commissioner, and I'm not done yet, so I'd really like to finish the jobs that have been started. I was remiss in not starting off all of this by saying thank you so much to the Dallas Examiner, to Monday Night Politics, and to the African American Museum for offering an opportunity for us in these unusual times to come in contact with more voters. I'm looking forward to questions. So thank you very much for doing it, and I'm glad to be here.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Hardin, the floor is now yours.
Thank you very much, and I thank everybody for this opportunity. Thank you, Dallas Examiner, and everybody that's viewing. I want to thank to all the sponsors that make this possible. And again, my name is Patrick Hardin, and I'm the Republican candidate for Dallas County Commissioner. Now, I'm a servant-style leader. I was born and raised here in Dallas. I mean, I'm a product of DISD and SMU, and I'm your choice for change. So I'm a single-parent father. I have a 5-year-old Latino boy who's part Brazilian. You know, I'm a taxpayer advocate. I'm a fiscal conservative. I graduated from Skyline High School. I have a Bachelor's of Arts degree from journalism from Stephen F. Austin, and I have a master's degree in conflict resolution from SMU. Now, my experience as a court-appointed mediator and my background in education and conflict will serve me well to be a valuable asset to be added to the Commissioner's Court. Now, as Commissioner, I'm focused on making sure our tax dollars are spent on taxpayers, and that we are properly funded for future outbreaks, and that we prioritize the safety of our citizens, and meaning that all our staff, county staff, and employees are funded with the right tools that they need in order to do their job. And I think we can modernize the way we interact with our citizens a little bit better with using social media and polls and media surveys. So I'm asking for your vote coming up here on early voting starting October 13th. And I'm asking you for your vote if you're not going to do early voting, but to also on Election Day, November 3rd.
All right. Well, thank you very much. So we do have questions already here in our box here. So we will start with Mr. Harton with the first question. And again, you both get the opportunity to reply to the questions, and your replies, if you can hold them to 1 minute, then you'll be within our timekeeper's time limit. So the question is, how is the VA project, and I assume this is the one in Garland, how is the VA project progressing, and will it require county funds?
I think you asked me first, so I'm not knowledgeable of where it stands as far as progressing, but I am knowledgeable of the project that they're putting the VA over there in Garland. So that information, I apologize, I don't have that type of answer for you, but you know, give me an opportunity, I'll get the answer for you back on where they stand on that project.
Thank you. Commissioner?
Okay, I was very active in the way that whole, from the time that the hospital was closed by the Baylor Scott and White, to what has been the role of a variety of partners to provide health care to the Garland area. The stakeholders got together in my Road and Bridge office to talk about what can we do. And so we put together a package with Parkland, with the City Fathers, with the Chamber of Commerce, with the elected officials in Garland to pull together the resources that we needed to at least get the health care to people in the Garland area. We were still looking for a buyer for the hospital. Fortunately, the VA has stepped up, and so it will not turn into an economic development eyesore. And the redevelopment of it, because they've got great plans to remodel the facility itself. It'll take about 3 to 4 years. So at this time, they have just barely begun to lay the plans to remodel the hospital. In the meantime, Parkland and Dallas County, other service providers have stepped up to increase our family services, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Next question. We'll start with the commissioner for this one. What is your commitment to bail bond reform?
Big question. Thank you for asking it, because it is such a big question. We are in the middle, obviously, of making bail bonds, first of all, do what they're supposed to do, which is ensuring that people who are arrested come back for their subsequent hearing. And so we're right now in that process of making sure that we have the processes within the court system, within the jails, and then with the bail bondsmen themselves to make sure we've got the data collected, make sure that we can do what's necessary for the level of crime that has been committed to make sure that happens. COVID kind of got in the middle of it and has thrown a few monkey wrenches in the way that we do business primarily through the court system and in that interaction with the jail, so that we've had to stop a minute to address the way that we can actually function as much virtually as possible, but then also moving towards having jury trials and those kinds of things. So the bail bonds piece of that is to ensure that people show up. And that is so that like the mechanics of that have been addressed as far as the collecting of information and making sure that notices get out and all that kind of thing. But now we're running into the stumbling block of actually
Commissioner, time is
with the hearings. Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Harden, your reply regarding the bail bond system.
Yes, thank you for the question, because in my opening, I talked about a priority for me is the safety of our citizens. And what you're talking about with that bond question is about the safety of our citizens. We do not want criminals that's out on the streets that should be locked up. And we don't want to place bond on people that should be able to get out when it should be done correctly because they don't have a history of crime. So if we're really serious about really attacking this problem correctly, we need to make sure that our criminal judges and our jail personnel have the right software in order to do it. And as of right now, currently, they do not. So that falls up under that texture thing that's been going on for years. One of the things that we've seen in our history, and it's a sad situation, but what happened over there in Commerce with those two girls that had passed away, they got shot by a guy who should have been placed on, who shouldn't have been able to get out on bond. And that's where one of our failures from our not having the proper tools we need in order to be successful, in order to make sure that doesn't happen. As commissioner, I think that's one of the major priorities. It shouldn't take 7 years to give people software in order to do their job correctly, to protect the citizens of Dallas County. So I'm all for making sure that we get the right tools in place so that doesn't continue to be an issue, that our judges have the right things that they need in order to do their job efficiently and effectively.
Okay, so our next question makes reference to our discussion a little earlier during the race regarding District Number 3. And it was regarding the handling of the COVID pandemic in the jail setting. The question is, would you have done anything differently than was reported by the previous candidate that was done regarding COVID, the pandemic, and illness, etc., in the jail setting? And if so, how would you handle that situation? And we'll start with Mr. Harden, since we started with Commissioner first last time. So the question really, if you did not catch the previous conversation in the previous race, how would you handle the COVID situation as it relates to the jail setting, to make it simpler?
Okay, so to handle COVID or any type of outbreak, one of the things we got to do is educate people how they catch the disease. We have to make sure we're educating people so they don't put themselves in position to be in harm's way. Okay, so what we did here in COVID was that we were told that you need the distance of 6 feet, and then wearing a mask, and also people who are sick, need to stay home. And those things need to be applied in the jail situation. So from a county commissioner's perspective, you want to make sure that you give everybody the proper tools that they need in order to be successful, so these things don't get any out of hand in what they are. So that is making sure that there's space enough so that we can put things in place where people can still function with their jobs and they can handle the social distancing. They have the right equipment like PPE equipment. All those things is needed in order to prevent the outbreak from getting out any further. Just like our businesses that did a really good job of following those recommendations so that we can function.
Thank you. Commissioner.
First of all, I wanted to tail end of the last question, just say that the response confused a number of different software packages. And so it really taking those things apart. As far as COVID in the jail, I'm very proud of the sheriff. Very early, very beginning of March, she set up quarantine sections, and she set up a very defined process for anybody coming into the jail for them to be allowed to get in. And by doing that, she first of all stopped the outside contact. And then if there was a person who turned out to be positive. She had arranged the sections of the pods in the jail so that they would be able to quarantine properly and then separate out the people who had tested positive. Through all her efforts, we have an incredibly low number of either inmates or staff in the jail who have tested positive and or are in quarantine. I'm very proud of the sheriff for what she's done, because what it means is you've got to take very seriously what you're doing. And thank you for the question.
Thank
Was
you.
that the buzzer?
That was the buzzer, indeed. Next question, and we'll start with the commissioner on this one. What will you do to improve access to mental health and drug addiction services?
Thank you very much. I spend a lot of time, in fact, on mental health, both in our jails and in the Dallas County community at large. And in fact, we are right now putting in more of the pieces so that depending on whether you can get mental health services at home and get treatment through visitation, or you need all the steps up to a facility for an inpatient care, we are now filling in more of the pieces. For example, there was already the reference to the deflection center, which should open this fall. And that's allowing for people who get arrested, say off of a 911 call, that there would be the option for local law enforcement to take them to the deflection center if there were mental health indications, rather than taking them to jail. The living room has also been opened, which is kind of a one-stop shop for people with primarily mental health, substance abuse issues to have a total roundabout of all services so they can address the particular needs that they have to better tend to the illnesses. Thank you.
All right. And Mr. Harden.
Very good question, because mental health is something that is very prevalent, especially with COVID. And what we're seeing is that because of situations that we're currently in, that's made a rise in people. I'm just trying to look at what mental health is and what mental issues are. So we need an awareness part first. I mean, there's a lot of mental health issues that's going on with our children that we don't even know about because we're unaware, because we're dealing with our own mental health issues. So what I'm thinking is that what we already have in place where we have like the phone banks where you can call in to people if you have questions regarding how, what's the right thing to ask your children, I'm dealing with anxiety, what do I do, before it gets to a dangerous point. Another thing is utilizing modern technology like Zoom. And there can be opportunities where a mental health professional can be on a Zoom for about an hour, just like we are here, and taking calls, or as you're doing, question and answering, to answer some questions to help guide people on what they're doing and making sure that they're staying healthy and giving them tips. Like I want to take a shot with the basketball or something.
That's our timekeeper, Christy Thomas. Thank you, Christy. Okay, so our next question is regarding taxes, and we'll start with Mr. Harton and then we'll go to Commissioner Daniel. Do you believe the county is able to keep the tax rate the same at the same time as continuing to serve the needs of citizens without cutting services?
Well, thank you for the question. So they've done that. They've done a good job of making sure that the tax rate is a low level. But the question as a citizen, because I'm a citizen too, is that doesn't really answer your question, because when you see your property tax bill, you still see your property tax bill is high. You don't really care about if the county gave you a low rating. You're still looking at the actual dollars on there, and you're not making sense to you. Why is it so high? Because there are other factors that go into play besides the percentage. So, the value of homes in your area help raise your property taxes. There's the ARB board, and they have their own little way of figuring out, along with the, if you're in the health area, along with the school districts, all these things come into play as far as your property tax. So even though they may lower it, you may not see a difference on your bill because of those other factors. But they have done a good job, and they need to be commended for it.
Commissioner Daniel.
Thank you, because taxes, the budget and management of the funds of the Dallas County taxpayers is my number one priority on my ballot. And yes, we have been able to maintain Dallas County taxes. They are the lowest large city in Texas and fifth from the bottom in all of the 254 counties. But we're still able to provide a high quality of service to Dallas County residents. This year was the first year we have maintained the same tax rate for 11 years. This year we went to the effective rate, recognizing that the pain that so many taxpayers were experiencing due to the raise of the value in their properties. Thus, they were paying higher taxes. The point, though, is you always have to be balancing off the needs of the people who live, the families who live in Dallas County, and what they're paying in taxes, so that they will continue to see this as the best place for them to live, to work, to play. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have several questions. Obviously, elections and voting, that's on the mind of lots of folks. We have several questions regarding that. So I'm going to ask Christy if you could give the reply 2 minutes each this time, please, because I'm going to kind of try to combine some of these questions. So really, a lot of the questions relate to elections, relate to somewhat the issue that came up about the spending on equipment, et cetera, regarding the county elections district, or office, I should say, and regarding the governor's demand that there be only one place to drop absentee ballots. So if you can just kind of cover your position about the issues as it relates to elections and voting, because obviously elections are to a certain extent run by the county. Obviously the state is stepping in here. So I'm going to give both of you 2 minutes each to talk about your top issues as it relates to elections and voting. And we'll start in reverse order. So we will start with the commissioner on this one. And Commissioner, if you could adjust your camera, because we were seeing more of the ceiling than your face last time.
Because I can't see anything.
All right, we can see you perfectly now.
Okay, now you can see me. Okay, then I will
Yeah,
see.
and timekeeper, I'm gonna ask you again, 2 minutes per candidate. Go right ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. Regarding elections, yes, the county government does run the elections. And in Dallas County, we have an administrator, Tony Pippenspool, who is the director of that department. My goal is to have safe, sanitary, fair, accurate elections. I do not want any Wisconsins or any Atlantas. Therefore, about a year and a half ago, we invested in new machines. And so far, we've had 3 elections on the new machines so that people, both the voters and staff and poll workers, have gotten used to what that means. As each election goes through, we made improvements in order to make it faster. And then as we're moving into COVID, we want everybody to feel comfortable that it is safe to go. There's been a lot of talk in the newspaper about mail-in ballots. Well, obviously the courts have decided that 65 plus, disabled, those outside the county are the only ones who can ask for and receive a mail-in ballot. We have invested this past Commissioner's Court in the mechanical method to be able to sort the ballots faster as they come in and more accurately in order to decrease any errors that there may be, so that there is no question in Dallas County about whether it is a safe, sanitary, fair, and accurate method of voting. So I encourage everybody, if you didn't register to vote today, it was the last day to do it, but please request your mail-in ballots and send those in as quickly as possible so we can start that mechanism to start counting them. Other than that, please do vote. It is our right. It is so central to a civic democracy. So thank you.
Mr. Harden.
Well, I'm glad that that question came up because in this time that we're living in right now, voting is so important. And if we look at the past, I understand the questions behind it, you know, because there's been a lot of things that right here in Dallas and Dallas County with voting issues that we've seen. So if you remember correctly, when people were going to vote and there was hardly nobody at the election places, there were people whose votes didn't get processed, and we saw those things on the news. We've seen money that the county has spent on election software and having to rebuy things over and over again. You know, we've sit there and witnessed in 2016, they got 4 people got arrested here in North Texas for voter fraud. So this is something that people are concerned about, and I don't blame them. I mean, we need people voting. We definitely need people participating in the process and the process work. So that is something that's still, it needs to be reformed, it needs to be changed, and a process needs to be put in place so we can have citizens feel confident that they don't have these types of questions about feeling if they're going to be able to vote. Now, the part with the Abbott thing, you know, and that's not something we have control over here. But, you know, that is a lot of, let's talk about the elephant in the room. There is a lot of cheating going on, and the cheating is going on both sides. And so what we need to do is find people that are serious about holding up what our country is about, our thing of holding voting as something that is sacred, and try to make sure it's done correctly and not be biased on these political games that people are playing.
Thank you very much. So our next question here is regarding the process of commissioners and raises. What is your position about the process of commissioners being able to vote for raises versus the citizenry being able to vote on raises for commissioners? And we'll begin with Mr. Harden.
Now, that's a hard one because then I don't know if we're able really to judge. I mean, as a citizen, I'm just talking about as me. Do I have enough information to really, normally if you're at a business, you do like 360 evaluations. You have some type of evaluation structure that you use in order to judge people if they're going to get a raise or not. Now, as a citizen, I'm not giving that criteria. I'm just giving information that I may see what's on the news or what people are telling me. There's not anything in place for me to adequately judge whether or not a person deserves a raise or not, just basically by what I see. And that may not be fair. So unless we can put some type of process that is fair, then that may be some road to go down that we can pursue. But as of right now, that's not something I think we're equipped as citizens to be able to do adequately to gauge whether or not a person should get a raise or not get a raise.
Commissioner, same question to you.
Sure. The raises, in fact, are determined by statute, or the process used to determine raises by statute. They can be changed, obviously. Dallas County has I've only been there 7.5 years, but it's always been that we all work together. Therefore, if there is a raise for all of the employees, it would include all of the elected employees also, because I work full-time. In fact, I work about 60 hours a week, and I have a job to do, and I think that you can tell when I do my job. But it's all of us working together. From the last recession, there was, the cutbacks and freezes and all those kinds of things. Salaries really got kind of out of whack. And so we've spent the last 6 years working on that in order to, if you're in the same category, that you got the same kind of a salary. When you start holding back this group or pushing ahead that group, that's when you really get into where that gets back out of whack again. So I contended this time around that all staff, regardless of who you are or how you got there, should get the same raise, because we're all in this together. We're all full-time people or part-time people. I'm a full-time person who have a job to do.
Thank you. Okay, so the next question is asking for a bit of specificity. And the question is, what will you do regarding criminal justice reform? And it's asking for, do you have a specific plan for that? And if so, what is it? So we'll begin with Commissioner Daniel with that one.
Sure. Criminal justice reform is one of those areas that I've also spent a lot of time in because it is so central to what we do as a county and wanting safe, fair ways of promoting justice and dealing with the criminality in our society. It started off with data-driven justice, which was about 6 years ago, of collecting information needed to do a better job in the courts and the jail. We've done quite a bit of work on creating that foundation so that, yes, in fact, I go to all the jail population meetings about who's in the jail, why are they in the jail, how long have they been there, what's happened to them, and what's the interaction with the courts for each one of them, in order to then see where are there areas that are out of whack. Definitely, we still have a disproportionate number of Black inmates. That is something that we are continually paying attention to and going through the whole system to see where we can do a better race-neutral examination of just how we do business. And that is a continual process that we're going through, that we've been going through for probably 2-3 years. Part of what has happened with that is our jail population has decreased from the time that I was first elected, because we're moving people more efficiently through the system, for one thing, so that people aren't in jail when they shouldn't be there. Second of all, having the data available so that you can keep on top of who is there and why they're there. And so what are better ways to encourage the courts to continue with the process of efficiency and only keep people in jail, first of all, when they need to be there and when they're supposed to be there. So those are at least the beginnings of criminal justice reform and what we hope to, what we hope the results will come out of it.
Mr. Hardin, you'll get 2 minutes.
Okay. Well, criminal justice reform is, most of the time when people talk about it, they only talk about it from the aspect of the criminal. Now, there's also another piece when I think about it. I think there's also an aspect for the police too, the police departments. When I was at, like, from 2016 to 2017, I was a behavior counselor. I was in a part of a diversion program on people who were committed, like, they did theft. I used to do theft training, and I used to do training for people who were involved in domestic violence. So one of the things when we talk about criminal justice reform, one of the things that we did and that the county's currently doing it, they're just starting out, and that is you have to do a proper assessment. We call it intake. And what it is you try to assess what the person's problem is to see where is it that's causing them. Do they need to go to, like, is it what what caused them to do any stealing? Was it because of a family need, they need money? So let's get them maybe some job training. Is it a mental health issue? Is it depression? You got to go through and try to assess them to make sure that you're trying to make sure that this is not reoccurring, that they're not just, criminals by habit. So instead of just putting people in jail. So they're starting that process. As you see that I was a part of that kind of process in working with people who were arrested. But then there's the police part too, because sometimes, and I may be a Republican, but I'm still an African American, and there are police that still pull us over for no reason, and still those things still happen. So they need to be addressed too. When we start talking about, because as she mentioned a little earlier, there are people in jail who shouldn't be in there. So it's that portion of criminal justice reform, I think, needs to be looked at as well as just the individuals, but the police department.
Thank you. So our next question will begin with Mr. Hardin. How much in discretionary funding does each commissioner receive? And how much have you spent or would you spend if you're elected in your district? So the question is discretionary funding and how much would you spend or have you spent in your district? And we'll start with Mr. Hardin.
Okay. Now, if there's any discretionary funds, I stated at the beginning that my focus is to make sure we spend our taxpayers' dollars on taxpayers. So one of the things is any money that I can utilize to help the district out. One of the things I would do personally would be reach out to all the nonprofits, all the churches, and try to get an idea of what the issues are that they're thinking that we need to address. Okay, and then what we'll do is compile it and make sure we get a list of, so like maybe we can break it down to like 6. One of the things that I was talking about making this thing more interactive. What we can do is we can actually put up on a website. These are the 6 things that we're thinking about throwing some discretionary money into as citizens of District 1 on a poll, rank them in the way you think the money should be allocated. So they'll have a process involved in this. So, I mean, I think that's one of the ways I would use that money, and then let that play itself out to figure out what it is we're going to do it on, and then we move forward.
All right. Same question for you, Commissioner, and then we'll have one final question and then closing.
Okay, well, thank you very much. The only discretionary funds that a county commissioner has are related to our road and bridge office, and they are closely regulated by statute as to how we can spend them. And so I do, in fact, spend as much as I'm able to on roads and bridge projects, trails projects within my district. That's what I have control over. I don't have any discretionary funds for anything else. I work with all groups across the county in my district. You talk about service providers, but I have to figure out how I can work with them in existing ways and direct in order to get the services where they need to be. Regarding the roads and bridge funds, though, I'm heavily invested in, for example, the redoing of the Skillman-Audelia connection at 635. I'm very involved with the connectivity of the trails, and thus I'm working on how we can spread them going from the spine, the loop, into the eastern part of the county. I'm working at that connectivity with trails that are existing and filling in the gaps between like the White Rock Trail and have that going into the Cottonwood Trail going north and then come around to the Katy Trail. We've almost completed where a person on their bike or running can get all the way around the county. So discretionary funds, those are where they go. And I work with my cities to figure out what are those projects that they give priority to. There's a lot of communication that has to go on, and I hope you see me smiling because I thoroughly enjoy working with my cities on figuring out how we can maximize the dollars that all of us have in order to provide the best for all of our taxpayers and make Dallas County the place that it ought to be to live in.
Thank you very much. So we are approaching your closing, which is 2 minutes each. So we've hit on a lot of topics. There have been a lot of questions we didn't even get to. The themes from those questions have been elections, voting, election reform, voting reform, COVID, specifically COVID as relates to the jail, even questions about masks being made available or not in jail, questions about taxes and things of that nature and funding. So we're going to start in reverse order. Last time we started opening with Commissioner Daniel. We're going to start closing with Mr. Hardin. So Mr. Hardin, you will get 2 minutes and I will turn it over to you.
Right. So I love Dallas and Dallas County. Of course, I was born and raised here, and we do have a lot of challenges that are not being met. But, I know that when we get the right leadership involved, we'll go ahead and we'll meet those challenges that are ahead for us in the future. Now, I've had the pleasure of a lot of people investing in me and around this community as I've grown up, people like Dr. Marvin Edwards, people like Dr. Frederick Todd, Judge L.A. Bedford, Fred Moses. And I've been a beneficiary of those people that invested in making sure that I'd be able to give back to my community. And one of the things I'm looking forward to do is doing that as a commissioner, county commissioner. Now, one of the things that you're going to hear from Dr. Daniels is she's going to boost about her experience, but it's not the type of experience that benefits taxpayers. Now, we didn't talk about this, but there's a public safety issue where there is still not any adequate software for our criminal judges and jail personnel. Now, within this 7-year period, every software deadline has been missed. All 31 criminal judges had suggested that we buy a certain software that was ignored. The chief information officer made a request, a suggestion that was ignored. And now we're out of over $30 million of taxpayers' money with nothing to show for it. Now it's time to move in a new direction. Public safety is a priority. You know, emergency preparedness is something we need to be concerned about. We are all hearing the questions about crime because crime is a big issue that needs to be addressed. You know, these are the things that we see before us that are challenges that I'm telling you that we're saying that haven't been met yet. You know, and I want to just say, just because we're here in a very contentious time, that all Democrats are not angels and all Republicans are not devils. Now, John Lewis, Elijah Cummings, and people like that who work to make sure that we have this Voting Rights Act didn't do that for us to vote straight Democratic. They did that so we can vote for the best person for the job. And Patrick Harden is the best person for the job for County Commissioner District 1. And I look forward to your vote, and thank you for your time and coming out and listening to this Monday's Politics, sponsored by the Dallas Examiner.
Thank you very much, Mr. Harden. We ask that you put your website link into the chat box, and we'll make sure folks are able to see that. And next up, we have Commissioner Daniel.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the Dallas Examiner and to you for managing this discussion that we're having. I would beg to differ that, in fact, experience does make a difference. I have had varied experience in Dallas County, so the 43 years I've been here, with a lot of that being able to ask better questions, for one thing. Second of all, I've been a researcher in social science for 30 years, and that too gives me tools to be able to ask better questions. Has it been a perfect run up to this point? No, and that's why I'm running for re-election, because the job is not done yet. What I would like to, in what I see as the priorities, are a safe Dallas County for everybody who lives here, for all of the families and kids who are here. That it be so that you are paying attention to criminal justice, but you're also paying attention to who you hire, and that it's a fair process, to how you do purchasing, so that it's a level playing field, so that everybody, in particular small businesses, can get a little bit of the piece of the pie and have a say, so that who we hire and who we buy from look like Dallas County. That is part of the goal that we're striving for. Elections, I would like to challenge anybody to find where that fraud is, because nobody's been able to find that fraud. And Dallas County is no exception in that situation. Elections, they must be fair. They must be safe. They must be secure. They must be accurate. Mental health and substance abuse and public health, public safety are our big issues, are very, very high on the priority list. I'm an MSW, so I do have some of that special training so that I know what I'm looking at, but can ask the good questions. Where are we going with these things? How do, and what's more importantly, what is the impact? So please, I'm Teresa Daniel, you're sitting, Dallas County Commissioner for District 1. I want to continue along a lot of the paths that we've been going for to make Dallas County a better place. My door is always open to hear new ideas, because I do want to plan for where are we going to be in 10 years and what are better ways to get there. So that's so many of the decisions that we're making now do have a longer term impact. And so, as I kind of joke sometimes, we don't do any of this stuff by ourselves. I'm very appreciative to the Commissioner's Court, but I'm also just so appreciative to all of our staff and to the citizenry of Dallas County and what they bring to the table, so that in fact we are all moving together in the same rate, to the same places, for the goals of making this the best place for people to come live and play and have their kids grow up. So thanks again for all that you've done to allow more discussion to happen. And I will be, I'm going to have to send you my information because I can't access anything. I don't have any video. I don't have any of the buttons to push. So I'll have to get back with you on that.
Can you state the name of the website if you know it? And
It
someone
is,
else here can type it down.
it's Commissioner Teresa Daniel.com.
I'll have somebody put it in. Thank you very much for being with us, both of you. We greatly appreciate your time with us. And folks, I know everybody, we've gone up to like 71 folks here today. So folks are still hanging on, and we are going to move on to the next race, which is for Dallas County Sheriff. And so for that position, we have two candidates. We have Sheriff Marion Brown and Chad Perda. So I'm going to have you all unmute. There you are. And let's see, we're going to unmute the sheriff. And you should both be able to unmute yourselves at this point. All right, there we are. All right, so in keeping with our normal format, we will start with opening statements. We'll have closing statements with questions in the middle, and we'll start opening statements in alphabetical order. So B comes before P, I believe. So we'll start our opening statements with Sheriff Brown. And so I'm going to mute my video and my audio. I ask you to do the same, Mr. Perda, and we'll hear from Sheriff Brown first. And our timekeeper will start the time. Go right ahead, the floor is yours.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of the program this evening. I really appreciate it. My name is Marion Brown. I am your current Dallas County Sheriff, and I have been serving in that capacity now for almost 3 years, 2 years as an elected and the first year as an appointed. So I am seeking re-election because we have much more work that we still have to do. I am a 32-year veteran of law enforcement. Of those 32 years, 28 of those years have been in management, managing police processes, police policies, budget administration. My experience includes patrol, so I know what goes on out there on the streets. Criminal investigation, including officer-involved shooting, community-oriented policing, and managing dispatch and records and those ancillary type functions within a law enforcement agencies. So my experience, the bulk of my experience has been managing law enforcement. Dallas County is the second largest detention system in the state of Texas. And other counties contact us to see how to do what it is that they are trying to accomplish. I'm not afraid or unable to make hard decisions. And so I am simply asking that people think about the fact that I have the experience, the management experience, and have been doing the work now. And I ask them to entrust me to continue what it is that we have started. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Perda, the floor is now yours.
Thank you for having me on. I love seeing the amount of people that are in attendance. This is wonderful. In my 17-year career in law enforcement, 16 of those years were spent with the Dallas County Sheriff's Department. Now, that gives me an insight. During my time with the department, I've worked several positions, starting as a clerk and moving up to the rank of detective. But throughout my career, I've tried to uphold several core values, honor and integrity being most important. My time as a detective, I can honestly say I'm proud of the fact that I held officers accountable. I participated in several high-profile cases, and I am one of the few that can say they have arrested officers, and I've also stood with them and defended them. For me, if you follow law and order, that you should be good. That is our duty. And so moving forward as your candidate for Dallas County Sheriff, I will continue to push that. I will push for community policing. Having grown up in Dallas County my entire life, I'm going to push with more community involvement within the department. more transparency with the department, and more interaction through media. I would like to see an era where we don't have to do open records requests, where this information is freely provided to the public. Several policy changes will be implemented under me, and we will move to bridge that gap that is formed here recently. I've been present at probably 90% of the protest downtown, 123 days of straight protesting, and I was present for majority of them. I was present for the initial protest. It's my feeling that as an elected official, you should be involved in your community, and you should be there and present, interacting with the groups, finding out what they want their voices to be heard, what they want to say, and coming to a middle ground. We have to be willing to give as law enforcement to move forward in this.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have some questions already here in the queue. Let's see. First question. What system have you or would you put in place to prevent a situation such as the Breonna Taylor incident? And so we'll begin with Mr. Purda, and then we'll move to Sheriff Brown.
The prevention of the Breonna Taylor incident is a very hard subject. Systems that need to be put in place. Less of a reliance on no-knock warrants. And I understand the officers in the Breonna Taylor case, they did announce, but we need, as law enforcement, we need to use no-knock warrants and less of a reliance. We also need to move forward with higher levels of training, more culpable statistics, and a greater level of probable cause. So when doing a warrant and when executing a search warrant on a house, I want my officers to be able to tell me who's inside that house. Are there any non-participants? Is there an unwilling participant in the home? We need to know all of this information moving in. Before that door is breached, you need to know who's in that house. And I know it's possible. I did 8 years on the Dallas County Sheriff SWAT team. I know we can find that information out before that door is ever breached. And so a higher level of accountability by our officers by changing policies and procedures, less of a reliance on no-knock warrants and a higher reliance on probable cause. We need to know more details before we make.
Thank you. Sheriff Brown, same question to you.
Okay, well, the first thing that you have to do is you have to make sure that your officers are trained. In that instance,
Sheriff Brown, could you first unmute your video, please, so we can see you? Thank you.
Okay.
Go right ahead.
Okay, the first thing that we have to do is we have to make sure that officers are well trained. In that instance, I don't believe there was ever a target that was identified that they were shooting at. They were randomly shooting. And so the first thing you have to do is address the training issues that are involved and enhance the training. The second thing that you have to do is you have to make sure that there is a supervisor, someone who has experience in doing these kinds of operations, who approves the warrant, who looks at the whole operational plan and approves that operational plan. You have to read it and reread it, ask questions, ask those things that are not right there evident in the warrant. You have to ask those questions, and you have to brief with all the persons who are going to be working in the operation ahead of time. Sit down and everybody talk about it to make sure that we have all of the I's dotted and all of the T's crossed. You can't take anything for granted. You have to make sure that you sit down and talk to everybody. And even if you have to go over that one thing over and over and over again, it's better safe to do it that way than to be sorry and end up like we did in this situation.
Thank you very much. So the next question is regarding the jails and health. The question is, when was the last public health inspection for the county jail and audit? And to what extent could that audit be made available to the public? How would the public get a hold of that audit? And so we'll begin with Sheriff Brown and move to Mr. Purda.
Okay, thank you. As you know, the State Jail Commission, the Texas Commission on Jail Standards, does an annual unannounced inspection every 254, all 254 counties are subject to this annual inspection. Our last one, I believe ours was in November of last year, and that includes health issues as well. And it is available. It is a public record that is available for the asking. So all you have to do is request it, and the record is available. In fact, when they come to Dallas County, the state generally brings a whole team because our facilities are vast. And so once we have done the inspection, the last day of the inspection, we do a public brief out. And that's where we invite the public to come and listen as the inspectors talk about what the situation in the jail look like. They give a public presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Purder, same question to you.
So under me, information such as jail inspection report will be available on the Dallas County Sheriff's website. That will be made available along with statistics such as the number of arrests, the number of warrants served, the number of releases, the number of inmates within the Dallas County Jail, COVID statistics. There's going to be several documents placed on that website that will make public information available and readily available without the need of a public information request. I would like to see a greater level of transparency within the department. So things such as the Dallas County Jail Commission report will be made public knowledge at its earliest availability.
Thank you. The next question, sticking with the issue of health in the jails. This question is regarding, obviously, the COVID pandemic is foremost on our minds. It's regarding the current plan and procedures as it relates to inmates and the public and employees regarding COVID-19. So the question really, if I can make it as succinct as possible, is how do you think the current plan as it relates to jails and the population and other people involved with the jails could be improved upon, if at all? And we'll begin in reverse order. So we'll start with Mr. Purda.
The current plan and procedures that are in place have several glaring holes. One of the first improvements I will make is a 14-day quarantine for new incoming inmates. This will ensure COVID doesn't get brought in from the outside. The other implementation will be testing. Testing right now is not performed on a regular basis for the jailers and the majority of inmates. It is done on a requested basis. What we need to do is step that up, and all jailers should be tested regularly. This will also further prohibit the intake of COVID because jailers are the only ones that are allowed to leave the program, leave the jail and come into the facility and interact with multiple inmates and multiple individuals, varying from other employees to visitors. So jailers will begin to be tested. The quarantine level will go a lot higher, 14 days when you first come in, and then anybody that shows symptoms, that entire tank will be quarantined, as well as lowering tank population levels. Right now, tanks are at maximum capacity in several locations, and we need to instill social distancing.
Sheriff Brown.
Well, actually, we do have a diagnostic tank in our facility. It is a 14-day tank. It is for those who come into the facility, and we do offer testing to the individuals who are in that tank. And we also offer testing to persons who are not necessarily in that tank if they feel that they need a test. So what we have been doing is fighting this thing, and I think we've been on the forefront of it. You said, what can we do to improve it? I'm sure that there are a whole lot of things that we can do to improve it, but I think that the things that we have been doing have helped us to get our hands around this thing and gain control of it and manage it. And I say that because we started trying to eliminate this thing and contain this thing at the first part of March. long before other law enforcement agencies, other county agencies, long before the governor, long before the state jail commission even put into place any actions. We were the ones who said, okay, we've got to take some actions. And what we did is now being followed not only by other agencies, but the jail commission is referring people to us to learn how to do it, what it is that we do. I encourage people to go to the state jail commission website to look and to see what true numbers look like. And when you consider the fact that we are the second largest facility in the state of Texas, and you look at our numbers, I think that you will be surprised to find that our numbers are less than 1%. Less than 1%.
Thank you. Question is regarding staff morale. What would you do, or what would you do differently, or would you keep it the same, I guess, to alleviate concerns of employees? And we'll begin with Sheriff Brown and then Mr. Purda.
Okay, staff morale is something that fluctuates. And of course, it fluctuates according to various circumstances. There are all kinds of variables that feed into that. And of course, COVID has not helped us in this instance in terms of morale amongst our employees. One of the things that we did was our employees had come to us, I'll call it pre-COVID, and ask us about making a casual uniform in the form of a t-shirt that identified them as sheriff's employees. Initially, we had said that we would not do that. But once COVID came and we saw that COVID was going to be a major factor on morale, what we did was we went back and we said to those employees who made that request, we're going to allow you to have the casual uniform so that you can be identified even in the facilities as a sheriff's department employee. And in addition to that, one of the things that we did was we brought in the Thanksgiving Foundation, who had solicited 30 restaurants to spend a day feeding our employees. 24 hours a day, they fed our employees. 30 restaurants came in and did that. I've received very favorable emails from employees, very gracious emails from employees thanking us for doing those kinds of things. But absent any solid thing, what we can do is listen to our people, address their concerns. The ones that we're not able to accommodate in the fashion that they would like for us to accommodate them, let them know that we can't, tell them why we can't, but still have an ear to listen to what their concerns are.
Mr. Purda.
So addressing morale in a department the size of the Dallas County Sheriff's Department is going to take a little more than t-shirts and one meal. What I'm going to do is change policies and the supervision from the top down. Right now, there is a supervision rank structure that is geared towards sending employees to internal affairs rather than addressing the concerns. And that will be changed. Under me, supervisors will have to now start doing their job and training their employees. There will be instances of employees sent to internal affairs, and in those instances, they will be addressed. But what I want to see is a workforce that has supervisors that are supervising and training and helping. Now, to address the glaring issue of mandatory, right now as a jailer and a detention service officer, you could be mandated to stay over another shift regardless of what happens. And though it is starting to wane, there are still jails that have considerable issues with this. And that's where part of this question came from concerning female officers. They are mandatory to stay over because there are certain aspects of the job only a female officer can do. The best way we can address that, increase our hiring. We have to open up a lateral program to bring other officers from other agencies into this department so that we can bring fully trained, ready to go officers and have them on the floor and deployed sooner than a year, 6 months to a year. So by bringing in new employees and retaining the employees that we have, we will address the mandatory overtime. Right now, the attrition rate is constantly climbing, and much of this is contributed to the morale and the supervision. It has to be addressed at a much greater level as far as policy changes and supervision, management, control, rather than just stopgaps that temporarily make a small portion of the employees happy. What we need to look at is an overall departmental change to address morale. By retaining those employees, we will now address the attrition rate, which will let us stop mandating. I don't want to see a sheriff's department employee forced to work 7 days straight, doubles each day. And there are several concerns with this. So we have to address this as a departmental issue, not just a singular T-shirt issue.
Okay, we have another health question, several actually on this same theme, is regarding the issue of whether or not an adequate number of PPEs have been made accessible in the jail, particularly to employees. But I'll expand that question to be not just employees, but inmates as well. Have there been an adequate number, in your opinion, both of you, of PPEs made available for the protection and safety of all involved? And we'll start with Sheriff Brown with that one. No, I think we started with Sheriff Brown before. We'll start with Mr. Purder with that one.
So it is my opinion that during this COVID crisis, not enough PPE has been provided. This is clearly evident by the 900 plus employees, over a third of the department, filing a lawsuit against the department for a lack of just that. As soon as the 28th of this month, an employee was sent to the hospital and is currently being released, thankfully, but due to his exposure to COVID, and that employee's wife now has to stop her stage 3 surgical cancer treatments because of her exposure. And this is tracked back to a lack of PPE given to the quarantine floor. This is further evident by the 13,000 plus masks that I personally donated to the Sheriff's Department at a time when I was being denied that offer by the sitting sheriff. I had to stand out in front of the jail and hand those out personally. We went through all of the processes, but instead politics were put above the officer and the inmate's safety. We have to change this. We have to stop putting politics before people. Currently, the Sheriff's Department does give out an N95 mask when they're requested, which I applaud them for that. That is what needs to happen. But this should have been done much sooner in the containment period than what it was done. When the resources were provided, they were not accepted. And this is well documented. We have to stop putting politics above people.
Sheriff, your turn.
I don't know what 900 people to whom is referred here in this instance, but I'll just throw that out there. I will tell you that PPE was made available to our staff prior to the CDC making any recommendation of using the PPE. It was early April when we began to give PPE to not only to our employees, but to each and every inmate coming into our facility. Now, as you know, because we are a county detention facility, we have communicable and infectious diseases that are in our facilities always. Prior to COVID, we had them. That meant that on a regular basis, we ordered and received PPE. It's that simple. So we had it. It was available to our employees. And as a good manager, you have to look at the big picture. Because this was early in the instance of COVID, we did not know how long or how bad it was going to go. So the smart thing to do is to use your resources sparingly. And that's what we did. But we made them available to our employees and our inmates.
Shifting the topic a little bit, question, and we'll begin with Sheriff Brown here. Is the Sheriff's Department ready for possible funding cuts?
Well, you know, as I heard someone say earlier, talking about the Sheriff's Department is dictated by state statute. It's not like a police department that you could choose to have or not have. It's something that a county and county commissioners have to fund by state law. And so if we're going to be required to have the sheriff's department, which we are, then it makes good sense to me to put forward to the sheriff's department the funding that is necessary to do it and to do it properly, to make sure that you are not just housing people, but that you are caring for people, that you have what you need in terms of training resources for your employees. So it's not something that we're at liberty to cut, if you will, because it's a state mandate.
Mr. Purda.
As it's been addressed by several different entities, from commissioners to the sitting sheriff, funding is mandated, but that doesn't change our obligation to the citizens and the residents of Dallas County. So under me, the plans that I'm going to implement will not cost a taxpayer a dime. By working with several judges, by working with the administration and the magistrates to expand PR bonds, personal recognizance bonds, we can start addressing some of the issues at the bond level for free. By working with divert programs, we can start lowering the population of the jail system while allowing individuals to get out of the criminal justice system by utilizing programs that are there and free. By opening up the sheriff's department, such as giving day rooms within the jail to community programs, to allow them to come in and assist with community and reintegration into communities and assist with programs within the jail, it doesn't cost the residents of Dallas County a dime, and we can actually work towards jail reform and judicial reform. And that's what we need to be doing. We need to start addressing these issues and not worrying about funding. By working together, we can do this without increasing funds. And the whole budget of the sheriff's department needs to be reallocated. It needs to be redesigned. It needs to be redistributed. That is the biggest thing about defunding police that everyone is pushing, a redistribution of funds to take them away from areas that they're not helpful in and putting them there in areas they are. So we do need to readdress our budget. And that will be one of the first priorities I do, is reallocating those funds to better serve the community, not just sitting back and saying we're dictated by certain aspects that funding has to be there. I'm sorry, we have to address the glaring issues, and we have to reallocate those funds and work with the community.
Speaking of the community, we're going to get a little more street level in the next question. That's kind of compilation of several questions I have here. How can the sheriff's office deal with situations as it relates to street drag racing, and I believe the donuts we've read about in the newspaper, not the donuts you eat, but the donuts from streetcars racing, as well as some people are concerned about some of the destruction as it relates to people who have been attending some of the protests. How could you, in this role as sheriff, address some of those issues, if you would at all? And we'll start with Mr. Purda.
Part of that addressing will be one of the opening statements I make to the municipalities within Dallas County. We're here to help. We're here to provide manpower if you need it. If we were to provide 5 squad cars, 5 patrol units per shift to DPD, they could accept anywhere from 1 to 200 calls a night to help alleviate some of that issue. Now, directly corresponding to the slideshows, and that's a hot topic right now. Everyone is discussing it. They're shutting down Commerce nightly with construction barriers to try and address this.
Bring me a phone charger.
A haphazard attack on this doesn't need to take place. What we need to start doing is work with DPD, assigning personnel, and have a strategic and planned out event to do this. Some of the other things would be host events at, say, Yellow Belly Drag Strip. Let's get them off of the streets and get them into a controlled environment. Those individuals that still decide to do slideshows on the streets, then we can pursue actions against them with task force, such as rolling out with multiple units to ensure there is not a chase that places individuals' safety at risk, and to ensure that it is a quick response so that we can protect the citizens. We shouldn't do anything that places citizens at risk. And that's kind of where we're stuck with. We need community programs to pull the law-abiding individuals off the streets, and we need to assist DPD by supplying manpower, vehicles, and knowledge, and work with the municipalities, not just sit back and watch as it takes place.
Sheriff Brown, same question for you.
Okay, well, I will tell you that we do assist Dallas Police Department in their response to the drag racing that's taking place. In fact, when there are such events, then Dallas, because they know that we have a highway management unit, then they often call us to assist them in those efforts. And so we're already assisting them in that. And I hear my opponent saying that he would allocate resources to DPD. I don't know at what cost you allocate resources to DPD and forsake the people of Dallas County for which you are responsible to answer and respond. In addition to being a detention system, we are responsible for making police response calls to the unincorporated areas throughout Dallas County. 14 such areas exist, which means that we have to answer the calls in those communities. And so if we reallocate our personnel to give them over to Dallas to help them, whereas we're already helping them, then I think that we're shortchanging the people in Dallas County.
All right, thank you. And the last question that we have time for, so that you have time for your closings. What specifically would you do to improve accountability for officers and the lack of trust between police and communities of color? And we'll begin with Sheriff Brown with that one.
Okay, very good. What I will do specifically is what my opponent is saying that he won't do. He won't refer people to IA. I will, when it is appropriate, refer people to internal affairs and hold people accountable. It is our core value. We have core values that are integrity, professionalism, and accountability. It's what the community cries out for, and it's what we owe to people. You know, I always say that to whom much is given, much is required. When we've been given much responsibility that we as police carry each and every day in our hands, then yes, we are required to answer to the public. So what I will do is I will continue to enforce our core values amongst our employees.
Mr. Purda.
All right, so apparently there was some confusion. I've never said I won't send someone to internal affairs. What I said is that shouldn't be used as a disciplinary matrix. We should have supervisions that are supervisors, not just relying on internal affairs. When an officer does violate a policy or a law, they need to be sent to internal affairs and prosecuted. Now, upholding integrity and accountability, that is very important to me. As I've said, I've arrested officers for not upholding their badge. What I want to see is I don't want to see a captain who destroys evidence in an internal affairs investigation, then promoted to chief. And when it comes out that that evidence was destroyed to promote a outcome that captain wanted, that nothing is done to that captain. What I want to see is officers held to that same accountability. We don't need a chief that has destroyed evidence still remaining to be a chief. What we need is accountable and integrity upheld. Under me, if an officer lies on a report, if they destroy evidence, if they lie on the stand, if they do anything other than report the facts as they know them, they will be disciplined. Most likely they will be terminated. If someone was to destroy evidence in a case to affect the outcome, I would terminate them and press charges. That is the only way we are going to start to rebuild this trust, is by showing the community we will hold ourselves to a higher standard than we hold anyone else to.
Thank you. Okay, so now I'm going to ask timekeeper Christy Thomas, I'm going to ask you to give them 3 minutes each for closing. And I'm going to throw out some themes that I see in the remaining questions that we didn't get a chance to get to. so that you can perhaps keep those in mind as you prepare your closing. We will begin closing with Mr. Purder and then move to Sheriff Brown. So here are some themes for you, most of which we touched. I tried to go beyond the ones we touched on already. Let's see, second chance programming as it relates to the crime rate. Let's see here, accountability, staff pay scales, past lawsuits, and general improvements of the department. As well, we have more questions about COVID and testing and those types of things. So again, we're going to ask our timekeeper to give you guys 3 minutes each to do your closings, and we'll begin with Mr. Purda.
He's on mute.
Sorry about that. Thank you for having me out here, and thank you for providing this forum to us. I would like to address many of these questions. If you have some questions for me that I don't address, please reach out to me on social media. I'll be happy to answer them. But looking into Dallas County pay scale, in 2018, I was responsible for getting us placed into what's called the mean average. So Dallas County is currently at a competitive pay rate. We're not the top, but we're not the bottom within the prescribed counties and prescribed municipalities that the commissioners allow us to look at. So our pay scale is doing good. What's not doing good is the fact that there is a disparity within the department. It's supposed to be based on your time of service, and not every employee is paid where they should be. Under me, I will push to make sure, regardless of race, sex, any outlying qualifiers you want to put on it, an officer will be paid based on the salary that they should be given. I will not just stand up and argue for my pay raise. I will argue for the pay raise of all the employees under me. Now, addressing some of the other issues. With only a short amount of time, we don't have enough to really get in depth. Please reach out and I will be happy to address these. One of the big concerns that was asked and it did disappear is how will we address bridging the gap between the community by opening up transparency. I will allow media to have access to the department. I will allow community programs to come in and work directly with my jail staff. I will allow them to come in and help, I guess, reinvent our SOP, our standard operating procedures. We have to bring the community closer. By working with divert programs, I will try to address issues within the judicial system that have not been addressed. By working with magistrates, we're going to address a bond system that is woefully underprepared for what Dallas County has and has been ruled unconstitutional. So we have to address these, and I won't sit back. I will address these issues. I will address community issues in my first year. I won't wait. It won't be 4 years from now whenever we start looking at some of these hard issues. You will see me on the street. You will see me working with individuals. I have been at the protest almost nightly. I've listened to these groups. I know what they want to be heard. I will be part of the community, and that is what we need to get to. We need to address these issues. We don't have time to wait. We should be addressing them from day one.
Thank you very much, and thank you for being here. Make sure you put your contact information in the chat for everyone to view that. We'll now move on to Sheriff Brown.
You're on mute, Sheriff.
All right. First of all, let me say that we also do not need a sheriff who would set a negative example and lie during an internal affairs investigation. When we're talking about integrity and accountability, then those are the things that we don't need in a sheriff. You know, law enforcement experts tell us that making the transition from an entry-level position to a level of supervision is the most difficult transition to make. But they say that if you can make that transition from being entry-level to being a supervisor, to that very first level of being a supervisor, then that's an indication of what kind of a leader you will be. So I'm saying that to say, this is not the time for placing the second largest detention facility, the 9th largest in the United States, by the way, the second largest in the state of Texas, into the hands of someone who has not made that transition, period. This is not the time. And so I want to remind our citizens that I have been managing law enforcement for 30 plus years. 28 of my 32 years has been in management. And talking about accountability, yes, I'm not afraid or ashamed to hold you accountable for what it is that you have done if there is something that is inappropriate that has happened. Again, the community cries out for leadership that's not afraid to say, you know what you did was wrong. The community cries out for leadership that is not afraid to say, you know what, I'm going to be the one to get on TV and tell people that I had to arrest you. The community is crying out for accountability. Now, as far as pay scale, you can say you want to do this and you want to do that, when the truth of the matter is the sheriff has no say in the pay scale. The commissioners set the rate. The commissioners are responsible for setting the pay, the salary of the employees. So you can dream all day and say what you want to do, but you have no control. The sheriff has no control over that. Also, talking about bridging the gap between the community, I have already hired a young lady who has worked for me now for almost 2 years to be our community relations officer, to put us in touch with the community, to find out what it is that the community expects and wants and needs from us. So that is something that we have already implemented to bridge the gap between the community. I'm proud to say that I have been endorsed by the Dallas Morning News, and the Dallas Morning News has been all up in my business throughout my tenure as the sheriff. Yet there is something that has compelled them to say that even in the midst of all that has been going on, she is still doing the work. She is still managing. And I ask people to vote for me to remain your Dallas County Sheriff's Department.
Well, thank you very much, everybody. And Sheriff Brown, we ask you as well to put your contact information in the chat so that everybody can read more about you.
Okay.
And thank all of our panelists from all 3 races, because it's not easy to run for office. It's not easy to hold office. So thank you very much, each and every one of you. And guess what, folks? Next week is our last week. So come on back next week. I'll be here, you know, God willing, and the creek don't rise, as they say. And we will go to our final races. And so as we close out today, I ask if you're interested in a little voter information, that you stay tuned, and we're going to share this PowerPoint slide to give you some information about voter ID law and things of that nature. So thank you very much, everyone, and just hang tight, and we will have these slides available to you in just a second.